谢谢您，谢谢您。我们再来听一下北京的王先生的电话。王先生您好。
肖军你好，肖军，我想向你请教一个问题，我有个问题哈，
请讲。
就是咱们这个莫言呢，他首先呢以拒绝评论那个同样从事文学创作的刘晓波获得诺贝尔和平奖啊，噤若寒蝉。第二一个呢，他鼓励中国的人民呢要抄写毛泽东在延安文艺座谈会上的讲话。第三一个呢，他在世界最大书展法兰克福书展的时候呢，和中国新闻出版局的官员一起啊，因为见到了中国的艺术作家戴琴夫妻呢，联袂拂袖而去，这是他的实际行为。那么他的身份背景呢，他是中国共产党党员，中国作协副主席，中国作协党组副书记、党组成员。那么我想说呢，就是说您刚刚也提到中国人因为他获得诺贝尔文学奖而高兴，但是我个人感觉到呢，却是深深的忧虑。那是不是中国诺贝尔奖文学委员会也保？
好，王先生电话突然断掉了。谢谢几位打电话来，都谈到了一个很重要的一个问题，就是说莫言呢没有提到这个政治方面的这样一个这样方面的一个问题，以及呢还有第二位这个听众谈到了一个所谓这个阴谋论，就是说这个莫言获奖是诺贝尔委员会为了弥补诺贝尔委员会把和平奖颁发给刘晓波所做出的这样一个姿态。北京的王先生讲的话比较尖锐，其中提到了拒绝评论3点的东西。你刚在这个节目之前呢，拿出了一个漫画，这个漫画挺有意思的，你给大家介绍一下这方面的一个背景和情况。
这个漫画一个叫阿平，我相信孔先生他也知道，他画的一个就是说中国作家的写作环境，就是这么一个漫画，不知道能不能就放下啊？他就说。就是画了一个莫言站在一个老虎的须上，然后拿着一个棍子在那走钢丝走平衡，然后他就说中国作家的写作环境是我不能回答，我不能分析，一分析它掉下来了。刚才王先生提到这一点呢，我觉得就是好多中国艺术作家都比较关心，就是说在3个问题上，这样其实中国作家冉云飞他在自己的博客上也谈到了这3个问题，就是他在法兰克福书展，他因为债情出席，他不出席。还有就是在刘晓波的问题上，刘晓波被判刑之后呢，中国的这个作家，北京电影学院教授崔卫平女士呢，采访了20多个这个中国当今比较有名的文人和知识分子，99%的人都说了话，只有莫言表示说，他说对这个问题我不表态，我不说话，家里还有客人，就到此为止，就是在这个刘晓波的问题上。那么还有一个问题是，他谈到什么方面的问题？就是刚才王先生有3个，一个是这个代行，还有一个就是他在那个最近有一批作家给这个手书就是抄写，你刚才说用大楷小楷写的，他抄写延安文艺座谈会上讲话，在这一点有很多的艺术作家也对莫言这点，因为他也难怪他这样。刚才王先生也提到了，他是中国作协的副主席、党组副书记，你说他不这样做，他还有其他的办法吗？
好的，我们想请孔先生您来谈一下。孔先生，您是这个伤痕文学的代表人物之一，您呢，可能也因为这个政治上的这样一个观点，受到过中国当局的这样一个打压。那从您的角度来看，您认为莫言，刚才海涛还有刚才北京的王先生提到的这几点，他的这个做法呢，是不是等于说对他是有这样一个负面的影响的？
这一点是当然的，我觉得这部漫画也很传神，就把这个莫言描绘成站在一个老虎的胡须上面，拿着一个长杆子走平衡的这么一个形象，这恰好是他的处境的写照啊。另外呢，这个从莫言本人来讲，因为他是来自一个红山沟的一个穷孩子，在部队里头当作家，后来由于他的这个写作的风格以及他的这个文学观，所以实际上是部队把他劝退的，然后他就挂靠到一个什么不重要的一个机构，这种文学上这种漂泊的这种某种程度上是到处找饭票这么一种状况呢，就对他的这个 观以及他的这个政治观点会有很大的影响。
好的，谢谢您。我们再请这个人在新泽西州的何新莲女士，请您谈一下，您认为这个文学作品和政治之间到底应该是有什么样这样一种关系在里面啊？当然，这个政治和文学是没有办法分得开的。诺贝尔文学奖是更注重于文学呢，还是应该把这个政治因素也要考虑在里面？
其实考虑政治因素，考虑这个普世价值，这一点呢是诺贝尔文学奖评委呢一直强调的。但是在这个评奖过程中间吧，出现了中国这一档事情呢，应该说他们可能也是有精神准备的。我个人倒是有一点这样的看法中国人呢，因为过去对这个诺贝尔奖的期望太高，所以真的中国拿奖的这几个人吧，因为大家太熟悉了，能看到他们各种各样的缺点，所以呢，就因此而失望。要说这个莫言的作品没有生命痛感，这点我不同意。他的那个生死疲劳虽然是寓言式的，但实际上对这个从土改以来到这个合作人民公社，到合作化人民公社，再到这个3年大饥荒，然后再到其他的整个农村变迁，他都有思考，只不过他是用一种荒诞的形式写作出来，而且他的生命痛感呢，我的感觉还是蛮深的。他对中国文化也还是理解非常深刻，只不过呢，他可能的反应吧，不像这个阎连科他们那样现实。如果你要说中国人呢，有一个这样的想法，就是文学甘于现实。如果你要中国人选的话，可能阎连科的作品会更受大家欢迎。但是呢，评委不是中国人，评委的是以这个瑞典的文学评论家们组成的，他们有他们的品味，有他们的思考和想法。所以我觉得莫言呢，这一次得奖呢，从这个文学成就方面来说，他还是独树一帜。尽管呢，今天那个广播里面已经说了，他是受了那个美国作家福克纳和哥伦比亚作家，就是马尔克斯的那个影响但是他毕竟已经是脱发出来了，有很浓厚的中国特色。我觉得是质疑的以及中国人不理解的，就是他的政治倾向。但是这一点呢，如果要考虑一下诺贝尔文学奖，还包括诺贝尔和平奖，都曾经授予给一些道德上很不值得称赞的人。像这个诺贝尔文学奖已经出了剽窃、性虐待，还有很多奇奇怪怪的事情，这样已经记录出好几位了。所以我觉得呢，可能这个诺贝尔文学奖呢，还是考虑他当下的成就，而不是更多的考虑政治问题。而且政治问题呢，他们对中国的看法可能也和对纳粹德国的看法不一样。他们对中国的看法呢，目前还是比较模糊的，至少是觉得中国正在改变，而且是朝着这个他们喜欢的方向改变。所以呢，评给这个莫言这个共产党员并不是他们觉得不可以接受的。这是我试图揣测那个诺贝尔文学评委的那个因为那个地方是个很特殊的地方，我曾经去过那边，有中国作家跟我说，那个地方就是因为呢是各种诺贝尔奖产生的地方，所以国家虽小，但是在全世界
不好意思，我要打断一下您了，因为我们现在还有不到1分钟的时间，我想最后一个问题想请教一下孔先生，愿意谈一下，这一次莫言获奖对于中国的文坛来说有什么样的意义？
他这个风波余波会比那个高行健那次还要大，因为高行健那次呢，尽管有各种各样的政治上的顾忌，或者是政府的这个不高兴，但是呢，高行健毕竟是远在海外，他让他们失去了一个记恨的对象。可是这次呢，莫言得了以后呢，虽然政府大概是持肯定的这个立场，可是在文学界也都会有很多波澜。
好的，谢谢您谢谢孔先生，也谢谢海涛来到我们节目现场，同时也感谢我们在新泽西州的视频家 上呢就是这个小时的时事大家谈节目。讨论中，来宾、观众和听众发表的都是个人观点，并不代表美国之音和 VOA 卫视。稍后还有 VOA 卫视的其他精彩节目，请不要走开。这里是美国之音的 VOA 卫视节目。在今天节目的最后呢，我们带您随着杨林还有麦克一起学轻松的学几句美语。
I think I'm totally lost.
What did you cancel for him?
There's a new script for the Dressology journalist that he's reading. It starts with war continues. And I took that Meehan because he's here.
Okay.
At the beginning we said like we cannot be here, but Meehan is here. That's all.
You'll still be on camera. Oops. Thank you so much.
You definitely cached everything, So there's seats over here marked reserved for her. Right next to a straight line. Let me get you some.
I'm still working on Oh, that's just like me. Yeah, I have a lot of friends at the place, so I hear and stuff. It's incredible. We have these exile people.
So we've got Arthur,
They're paranoid, they're out of the fashion. Yeah, I just kind of learned it early. Nothing surprises me. Right.
Right. 1 2 check. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Mic check. 1 2.
It's a big service, and I just drama. I have this to-do list, and I just keep having to change my priorities. You know, the stuff I want to do, creative stuff. And that's kind of keep the ship moving forward rather than backwards. It takes it's a lot of us have to do that. How about Steve Reich?
Yeah, he wasn't supposed to be here, so I don't think they put a yellow mic.
Is he staying? Yeah, where's he going?
But Brian's here.
Yes?
Okay.
Just remind people to please use the
Great. In February, the board designated me to serve as presiding governor on an interim basis to preside over the board in its meetings. This is an open meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors held in compliance with the Government in the Sunshine Act. The live broadcast would also be available on the BBG website, www.bbg.gov. Governor Sunshine cannot be here today. We welcome Governor Perino, who is joining us by telephone. The presence of 5 or more governors satisfies the board's quorum requirement. The board may conduct business based on majority vote, a quorum being present. Dana's on the phone. Dana, are you?
Yes, I'm here.
She's there. The board continues to be outraged by efforts to stifle the free flow of information, including the jamming of satellite signals and the harassment and intimidation of journalists. Of particular concern is the recent disruption of broadcast signals carrying U.S. government-sponsored international news and information across several continents. Satellite operator Eutelsat has confirmed that the intermittent interference on October 3 and 4 originated in Iran. It is in clear violation of international agreements and not the first episode of its kind. The jamming diminished or altogether blocked TV and radio programs that are normally seen and heard in dozens of countries from Morocco to Indonesia on the Middle East broadcasting networks Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and the Voice of America. In addition to VOA's Persian service and RFE-RL's Radio Farda, both of which offer programs for Iranian audiences. The jamming affected dozens of satellite broadcasts of BBG radio and TV programs on the Eutelsat satellites, including Arabic, Georgian, Armenian, Bosnian, Korean, and many other broadcasts. The board calls on Iran to cease disrupting broadcast signals and to respect the well-established international agreements that prohibit jamming. At the same time, the board condemns the harassment of our journalists abroad by police and government officials. Marta van Wolf, a VOA reporter in Ethiopia, was forced to erase the recordings that she had made of a protest rally by local police. Gulnur Kazimova was prevented from taking pictures and was physically blocked from attending a public event by Azerbaijani officials. Just yesterday, RFA and VOA reporters were summoned to a meeting with government officials in a blatant attempt to discourage objective reporting on the Cambodian government. As reported by Reuters, AFP, and others, RFA and VOA broadcast locally in the Khmer language and are among the few radio stations in Khmer in Cambodia considered free of government influence. In addition, journalists in Belarus, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Libya have been harassed and prevented from doing their work. The board calls on governments to cease the intimidation of journalists and to hold responsible those who try to obstruct their reporting. Finally, it has been almost 2 months since the capture of Al-Hurab journalists Bajir Fahmy and Kunayet Unal in Syria. On August 20, Fahmy and Unal were reporting from Aleppo, Syria, when they were abducted. On August 26, Unal appeared on Syrian television, but the Syrian government has said it has no information on Fahmy. The board is deeply disturbed by the lack of information and is increasingly concerned about the well-being of the missing journalists. The board demands their immediate release. Now moving to tab 9 in our books. The board held its last formal meeting on September 13th, 2012 at the BBG headquarters in Washington, D.C. The minutes of the September 2012 meeting are found behind tab 9 in the briefing book. Any governors have any comments or questions about the minutes?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to offer a clarification on the minutes. On page 4, the first paragraph relating to the issue of the non-disclosure policy. And the third sentence in the first full paragraph, where it says, in response to the concerns raised by Governors Ashe and McCue, Governor Mulhaupt explained the legislative proposals are pre-decisional under Office of Management and Budget guidelines and should be kept confidential. I think this requires clarification. In fact, I think what we agreed was that anything related to the Innovation Act, which is currently being discussed on the Hill and discussed in the board, is not really pre-decisional. It's in the public domain. It's in our strategic policy, and I think we agreed that governors are free to discuss that. So it's not confidential under the non-disclosure policy, in my view. I think that's the conclusion we came to, and I would offer that clarification for the record.
Okay.
Well, I mean, how's it going to read? I'll second your motion, but I mean.
Well, I mean, if you would let it, I actually haven't written out something, but I think if we agree on the principle that the proposed Broadcasting Innovation Act, part of which is the creation of a CEO position, are both in the public domain. They both would have advantages or be advantaged by public discussion. That the International Broadcasting Innovation Act that's being discussed, including the CEO, is not pre-decisional and is therefore not subject to the non-disclosure clause.
So I think an appropriate amendment, if you allow me to, would be to delete the third sentence in this first paragraph on page 4 and substitute in lieu thereof what you just said. It is the third sentence that you're saying inaccurately.
Third sentence, right. Well, I just think we had a conversation about this at the board meeting, and we agreed that it would be it's not logical to try to apply the non-disclosure policy to the Broadcasting Innovation Act.
Then why don't you just move to delete the third sentence from the minutes?
Well, I think that's fine. I mean, there will be legislation potentially that could be subject to the Non-Disclosure Act because of the requirements put on us by the White House and OMB as part of the executive branch. But with respect to the International Broadcasting Innovation Act, which is currently being discussed, that's not pre-decisional, and it's not subject to the non-disclosure clause. I think we're agreed on that, right?
Correct.
Well, I mean, then I would make a motion to remove the third sentence from the minutes, and then let's deal with what. First of all, it needs to come out, and then we'll move to.
The point I'm making is that some legislative proposals may be pre-decisional. What I'm saying is, what is not pre-decisional is the current Broadcasting Innovation Act and the CEO.
Well, then you want to add the word "some" between that and legislative?
I think you can get rid of it.
Okay, well, Paul, do you have that? Okay, fine.
Well, we have to have an actual motion.
I move that we delete the third sentence with the understanding that we would like to reflect in the minutes that we are not trying to prevent discussion of the Broadcasting Innovation Act or the creation of a CEO.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Any governors have comments or questions about the minutes other than that?
Well, I do, for the record, Governor Mulhaupt indicated to me he does hope to have a governance committee meeting on November, what would it be, 15th? That's our next meeting.
It would certainly be my intention. The only reason we didn't have it this time is because timing just didn't allow it.
But at that governance meeting, then we can review further the non-disclosure policy and the enforcement provisions, which are, in my view, incredibly vague.
It's on this whole concept of the non-disclosure policy is on the agenda and will be discussed at the next meeting.
Okay. Any governors wish to move for adoption of the minutes of the board?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Moving on to tab 10. In September, the board received by email for its consideration the proposed dates for BBG meetings in calendar year 2013. For scheduling purposes, the board should adopt the dates as proposed, but not discuss the venue for these meetings, as they will be taken up at the next governance committee meeting. I'd like to move for the adoption of the proposed dates. Is there a second? All in favor?
Wait. Mr. Chairman,
I have no problem. First of all, I think they should have gone to governance in the first place. And, you know, when we meet in Miami or Prague, obviously governors can determine. But I would point out, when you choose the dates of Wednesday, Thursday, as opposed to Thursday, Friday,
yeah,
it adds a significant travel cost certainly to me, because it becomes impossible to get a Saturday night stay. Well, unless I just stay on my own. And when I say significant, I mean $800 to $900 per trip more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it does for West Coast people, but Knoxville and Washington don't have the special ticket fares. Knoxville's not on the LA, DC.
Well, why don't we
route.
do this then? Let's take another look at the agenda, rather at the calendar, and we'll come back and if we can do it within that week, we'll move it back.
The week is fine. I'm just saying we ought to try to be more cost effective. Obviously, by spring, we may have a chair confirmed, and we may have new board members who have new thoughts on the matter. But it seems to me we ought to maybe approve it through May and then let governance at the November meeting go over this at more discussion, so we don't spend 20 minutes here.
That's fine.
So I would suggest that the motion be to approve the suggested dates of January through April.
Okay.
Well, I'd be glad to do May. And then, obviously, governance will still discuss it, but since two of those are Wednesday, Thursday, everyone would know that at least we would think further about that.
Fine. Can we adopt this through May then?
Yeah.
Will you reflect that?
I move that, the motion then would be that we adopt the proposed dates through the month of May 2013. Dennis, is that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections?
And then revisit the other dates after that?
Well, the governance will meet November 15th.
They'll meet in November 15th. They'll
We'll come
find out
back
the
with
other dates.
recommendations.
Okay.
Locations we discussed.
Well, we can still do locations. It seems to me March should still be Miami. That's what it's always
Where
been.
they are, the meetings?
You want to decide that now?
Yeah.
No, I was wondering if there was a reason why we hadn't.
I don't
put it
know.
down.
No, I don't have
Does
any reason
anybody
for
have
that.
a reason?
Was it appropriate to make a motion that the March meeting would be at OCB in Miami?
Just a question. It seems like.
I don't think there's any objection.
Oh, I'd
So
make
moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Great.
And we know that day, the days of the week might get altered, Dennis. Is that right? Might.
Might.
Okay. Behind tab B, 8 in the briefing book is a resolution honoring Leo Sarkissian, who started the immensely popular English language Music Time in Africa radio program for VOA more than 47 years ago. I'd like to ask VOA Director David Ensor to describe Mr. Sarkissian's extraordinary work and invaluable contribution to VOA. I'd like to invite Governor McCue to introduce the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a real honor for me. We had a little going away party for Leo, who's seated there, a few weeks ago, and everyone in the room learned something new about this extraordinary man, really one of VOA's icons. As you said, the music man for Africa for VOA. He was recruited by Edward R. Murrow in 1961. He spent his life studying, collecting, and playing music from Africa on our air, and he is one of the reasons that we have such a large audience on that continent. His accomplishments are legendary. He visited every country in Africa and assembled a collection of music that's now housed in the basement here and is recognized as one of the largest and best of its kind in the world. He created the radio program, as you mentioned, Music Time in Africa, our longest-running English language program music show. And here is a short clip, if everything works properly.
This is a great recording of music from the Congo's Katanga region made many years ago. It's not easy to find this kind of music today, even in the same region of the Congo. In this recording, there are 9 musicians belonging to the Lunda ethnic group. They come from an area called Kapanga. The musicians are performing a special song and dance that was part of a ceremony that takes place when a person or group of people are leaving the village. Among their instruments is a large rectangular box drum. The drummer sits on the top of the box, and he changes the tone of the drum by placing and rubbing his heels on the drum head. There are also 2 basket rattles and a bottle. All right. This little coffee and donuts goodbye for Leo got covered by the Washington Post style section, and so a lot of people in the room already know the story of Leo Sarkissian. I won't go any further except to say that I want to thank you, Leo, for your 49 years of service, and I'd like to turn it over now to Governor McCue to handle matters from here.
Turned it off.
Oh, I turned it off. Okay, it's on. Thank you. Leo, what an honor. You really are a national treasure and a world treasure, and we are all so grateful for what you've done. It's a particular honor for me to be able to introduce this resolution to the board. I want to, some of this might be duplicative, but I think for the benefit of the board, I want to read through a little of this verbiage from the resolution. As David said, you were recruited by the former U.S. Information Agency Director Edward R. Murrow, and you've served with distinction as the Music Man for Africa for the Voice of America from September 1963 to September 2012. You started the immensely popular, as Governor Lynton said, Music Time in Africa radio program, the longest-running English language music show at VOA. I also want to recognize your wife, Mary, of 63 years, who's been by your side throughout your entire career. I know she's helped answer hundreds or thousands of fan letters to you. We have established, the VOA established in 2004, the Leo Sarkissian Library of African Music to preserve your recordings. For the past decade, the State Department's Bureau of International Programs has been sending you to visit Africa as VOA's music ambassador. Your picture is on display in villages, schools, and radio stations throughout Africa, and you'll always be admired and remembered by your colleagues, your friends, and your loyal fans. VOA will be dedicating a radio studio with a commemorative plaque in your honor. So therefore, I want to, if everyone can turn to the resolution, be it resolved that the Broadcasting Board of Governors hereby expresses its great appreciation and gratitude to Mr. Sarkissian for his invaluable contributions to the furtherance of the mission of U.S. international broadcasting.
Yeah.
Let me turn this mic over to Leo for him to say a few words.
Thanks, Victor.
Take my chair. That would be great with great applause anyway.
After all these years, I'm still afraid of the microphones. I haven't expected this. I feel very, very much honored and wish to thank all the members of the Board of Governors and all my colleagues here and our director, David Ensor, and all my other friends. I actually thank the Voice of America for letting me carry on the work that I've loved as a child, and music and my art. So I feel honored that I was even allowed to, I was able to do all this. And I wish I could go on for another 60 years. Thank you.
to actually vote on the resolution.
We certainly do. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution is
Passed. Did I go up to the front? Now it is our great pleasure, to present the 2012 David Burke Distinguished Journalism Award winners. The Burke Award recognizes a select group, those who further this agency's mission by informing and enlightening with originality as well as affecting the lives of our audience in a meaningful way. These awards honor people who have distinguished themselves through extraordinary talent, hard work, and above all, dedication to the highest standards of journalism. The board established the David Burke Distinguished Journalism Award as the most prestigious form of recognition within our agency. It acknowledges the courage, integrity, and originality of BBG journalists. Let me say to our reporters and broadcasters that your efforts inspire not only the board, but audiences around the world who depend on U.S. international broadcasting to provide unbiased news and discussions of current events, both global and local. David Burke's illustrious career as a broadcast executive and public servant exemplifies this award, those values this award celebrates. At ABC News and CBS News, David steadfastly defended the demands of professional journalism and the right of people to have access to the news against the expediency of short-term commercial gain. As the founding chairman and leader of the BBG for our first 3 years, he imprinted on our collective consciousness the cardinal importance of fulfilling our mandate free of any inhibition, hesitancy, or outside control. The award carries with additional recognition in the form of a financial incentive to be used as the recipient sees fit. The award citation reads, "In recognition of your dedication to the advancement of the cause of freedom and democracy through free exchange of ideas as exhibited by your original work, you have enlightened audiences and had an impact on their lives in lasting, meaningful way. As such, the board is proud to honor you with this award." Before presenting the awards, we'd like you to join us in viewing this short video produced by talented Marti staffers Gina Barossa and Mark Gillingham, which highlights excellence in reporting by our own BBG broadcasters. As you will see, these individuals have overcome great obstacles to bring important stories to BBG listeners and viewers around the world.
The David Burke Distinguished Journalism Awards recognize exceptional integrity, bravery, and originality in reporting across the networks of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. The 2012 Voice of America Burke Award winner is Mukarram Atef. Atef is honored posthumously for his dedication to delivering accurate, honest coverage of a dangerous tribal region of Pakistan for Diwa Radio. On January 17th, Atef was attending evening prayers at a mosque near his home when he was killed by Taliban militants. Having been threatened many times, Atef risked his life on a daily basis to provide fair and balanced news of militant activities, militant operations, and social issues. He reported tirelessly from northwest Pakistan's lawless tribal region since VOA's launch of the Pashto language Diwa Radio in 2006. Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty's 2012 Burke Award winner is Sailab Masood. Masood is one of the most prominent journalists in the Pashtun tribal area of Pakistan and receives the Burke Award for his coverage of events there. When Shiite pilgrims in 3 Afghan cities were attacked by suicide bombers in December 2011, Masood not only broke the story, but was the first to identify Lashkar Jongvi al-Alami as the Pakistani group claiming responsibility for the attacks. Radio Free Asia's 2012 Burke Award winner is the Korean Service for its proactive efforts and outstanding teamwork in covering the death of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il in December 2011. The Korean service employees worked around the clock for days on end to report on developments as they unfolded in North Korea. Comprehensive coverage included perspectives from the international community, media outlets, North Korea experts, and defectors. The Middle East Broadcasting Network's 2012 Burke Award winners are Lamia Rizki Baraga.
Radio Sawa broke the news, and I had the exclusive interview with the person who found them, the nuclear warheads.
And Mohammed Mowad of Radio Sawa. The two are recognized for their coverage of the clashes in Libya for Radio Sawa. In one instance, Mowad was traveling in a boat between Misrata and Benghazi when it was shelled by Gaddafi militants.
So going there to cover in Libya was like visiting death every time.
Despite such incidents, Baraga and Mowad continued to provide outstanding reports from the front lines in the fighting in Libya, giving listeners eyewitness accounts as history unfolded. The 2012 Radio and TV Marti Burke Award winner is Karen Caballero for her coverage of the Lights of Liberty Flotilla, a small group of boats with a mission to sail across the dark and hazardous Straits of Florida to just outside Cuban waters in order to set off a fireworks display. The event sought to draw attention to the solidarity between Cuban exiles and those residing on the island, and to human rights abuses by the Cuban government. Caballero was the only journalist aboard one of the vessels and provided dramatic eyewitness reporting of the event. Congratulations to all 2012 Burke Award winners for their exceptional bravery, integrity, and exemplary reporting.
As you know, one of our honorees is being recognized posthumously. We will never forget the courage of VOA's Mukarram Khan Atef, who paid the ultimate price for his pursuit of the truth. I'd like to invite David Ensor and his colleagues to the podium to accept the award on behalf of Atef.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief, just to say that Mr. Atef was a courageous man. Why don't you come and bear witness to this award to your colleague. He was a courageous man who'd been threatened many times, but refused to stop doing what he believed in. And after his murder, his wife's message to us was that her husband loved Diwa Radio and loved the work he was doing. And she said that if we want his soul to be happy, we must keep Diwa alive. That's exactly what VOA and our Diwa colleagues have been doing. Our stringers to continue to report from the region despite continuing threats from Taliban militants. In the same month Mr. Atef was killed, we bolstered our reach in the region by starting a daily 1-hour radio on television simulcast program, which is further developing the audience in the Northwest Territories of Pakistan. I'm joined here by Nafis Takar, who's the head of our Diwa service, as well as Spojmai Maiwandi, who's our director of South Asia Division. Nafis, do you want to just say a couple of words about your colleague?
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving this posthumous award to Mukarram Khan Atef. I must mention here that militants and state in Pakistan, they don't kill or threat ordinary men and women. They kill and threat extraordinary men and women. Mukarram Khan Atef was one of those guys. He reported events from his valley, and that valley where Pakistan has lost its threat. Haqqani Network, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, all of them are there. And he was killed because he was the true narrator of the events that were originating his area. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Now let me invite Steve Korn to join us in the presentation for the RFE-RL winner. Salib Massoud of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberties, RFE, RFL, Radio Marshal is joining from Pakistan with us via Skype. Thank you, Massoud, for your outstanding reporting.
Thanks. First of all, thank you so much. I will continue in Pashto, and Mr. Ishfaqi would be my translator. زه ډېر فخر محسوسوم چې دا award ته ملاو شم.
I feel proud that this award goes to me.
گو که زه د پاکستان په ډېره سخته قبایلي علاقه کې د journalistic struggle کوم.
Though I am working in very hard area and struggling in the area of tribal areas of Pakistan.
په مات شي د طالبانو القاعده او پاکستاني فوج.
And right in the middle of Al-Qaeda, Pakistan military, and the Taliban. And I accolade
the Marshal Radio
my friends from Marshal Radio who nominated my name for this award. And I accolade all those judges of BBG who nominated me in such a dangerous area where there are Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and drone attacks. Which specify which shows there are not only terrorists over there or drone attacks or Al-Qaeda. There are peaceful people and bold journalists are also there in this area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I am pleased to say we have a couple of Burke Award winners joining us in person, including Karen Caballero of Radio and TV Marti. Karen, it sounds like you had an amazing reporting trip in such rough seas. Please join us to receive your award, and let us congratulate you for your excellent work.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the BBG for the work you do. I would like to thank, of course, Carlos Garcia and Guillermo Santa Cruz for the work they're doing down in the Martis. They do it from the heart, taking the free information to the Cuban people in the island. I would like to thank the team in the Martis that work every day hard to take something that people deserve, the free information, and that people in Cuba don't have. In Cuba, there are people in prison for thinking different. They are harassed, they put their lives in danger. And I believe that one thing that we can do to help and support these people that really need our support is to take the free information to them. That's why I'm proud to work at the Martis. And I thank, of course, my family, because without them, I would be nothing. And I thank my father that brought me to this beautiful country, that has given me so many opportunities that I didn't have in my own country. And, well, you know, I think I'm going to say something that I think every day when I go to work. People in Cuba deserve and need our support, our help, and they need to know that they're, you know, supported from people outside. They're not alone, and that's what we do every day. I'm used to talk on the phone, on the microphones until I am nervous. So thank you so much.
Radio Free Asia's RFA Korean service is being honored. Max Kwok, the service chief, is here representing that outstanding group of individuals. You reported on a critical transition in Korea. Congratulations on your outstanding coverage, and please join me and Libby to receive your certificate on behalf of your whole team. Please.
Just a couple of words, Max. Your team amazed me, the way they just kept working without sleep for so many days. My kind of journalist. And very courageous, but also very insightful. We took the North Korean statements about what was happening after the death of Kim Jong-il, and we examined the pictures, in fact, that were taken of people mourning, and discovered there were a lot of fake pictures and stage pictures, and that kind of investigative angle to this, which I should add to the whole mix. So thanks so much, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for kind words. I'm still sleepy. Well, on behalf of the RFA Korean service, I'd like to thank the BBG for the recognition of the work that we have done following the death of Kim Jong-il December of last year. I take it as an encouragement to do better and more, perhaps with the limited resources, to get the truth and unhindered messages of freedom and democracy to hundreds of thousands of listeners, RFA listeners in North Korea. Thanks again.
Mohammed Mulhaupt and Lamia Rezgui Burgoa of Radio Sabah are here with us in person. You were on the front lines of coverage of the dramatic upheaval in Libya. Please join us along with Brian Conniff to celebrate your outstanding work and share a bit of your experience.
I'd just like to remark that in a world, in a region dominated by TV, these two radio reporters brought the catastrophe that occurred in Libya to vivid light in the minds of the people in the country and in the region. They didn't just cover the destruction of streets and buildings and the numbers of people killed, but they brought the human face of the catastrophe to the region, and for that, I think they deserve this award.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Say what word?
I just want to share this experience with you. I had the chance actually to meet with Ambassador Chris Stevens twice, and one of the most important questions that I'm still remembering them right now, I asked him why you are here. There's a lot of shelling over there. I'm as a journalist coming from covering the protests in Egypt where people just chanting only. Here, people are armed. I was like, oh, that's not a protest, it's a war. He said that people here are looking for their freedom to gain their life, liberty, and we have to be here. It's our responsibility to be here to deliver the message that we will block any smother that they may face in gaining their freedom and liberty. Thank you. I appreciate your. That's a big honor. Thank you.
Just a correction, Lamia Rezgui Buraga. Yeah, I really thank everybody. I really thank all my colleagues and all my supervisors at the BBG, at the MBN. And I want to dedicate this award to the BBG also and MBN. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again here. Maybe if you send me to some other places, I will do maybe much better. And I also want to dedicate this to my late father, who made out of me, I guess, a courageous person who does not fear anything, I guess. Thank you very much, and that's all. I also dedicate this to the Libyan freedom fighters who really fought for their freedom. Thanks.
Thank you and congratulations. We are proud of the work of all of our media professionals, but there is extra pleasure in recognizing these superlative efforts.
I think that's it.
Right. We now turn to Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty for its report to the board. But first, I'd like to say something about circumstances today for audiences in Russia, a key strategic priority for RFE and RL and this agency. During the first 100 days of his second incarnation as president of Russia, Vladimir Putin has taken steps that sharply curtail freedom of expression. He and the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament, have enacted a series of laws that will raise fines on protesters, impose limits on the internet, make slander a criminal offense, and require non-governmental organizations that receive funding from abroad to register as foreign agents. Freedom House consistently rates Russia as not free in its annual surveys and has just said that online communication in Russia is partly free in a survey of the internet released in September. With this and other factors in mind, RFE-RL last month consulted with this board on some proposed changes. These include a shift toward internet programming that dovetails with the need to comply with what is known in Russia as the law on mass media. New amendments to that law will make it illegal for an entity that directly or indirectly has more than 48% foreign ownership to hold a broadcast license. Similar rules exist on broadcast licenses in the United States and the European Union. These amendments come into force on November 10th. What's more, unlike in the United States, where Russian self-sponsored programming, including RT television, is widely available, Russia has virtually closed its markets to our content. Over the past decade, RFE-RL and VOA lost virtually all their local affiliate partners in Russia due to increased harassment from local officials and national regulators over taxes, license enforcement, and other issues. A decade ago, RFE-RL had nearly 40% affiliate stations, 40 partner affiliate stations, including in all 10 of Russia's biggest markets. But after November 10, RFE-RL will have just one affiliate in a small town in the remote Kola Peninsula. This board strongly objects to the tightening stranglehold on the free flow of information taking place today in Russia. Further, I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate that we support the seasoned executive we appointed to lead RFE-RL's effort to keep audiences in Russia and elsewhere apprised of the news in spite of their government's efforts to quash it. Steve, please provide us an update.
Sure. Thank you, Governor. There has been a lot of inaccurate information circulating here in the U.S. and in Russia about the future of our Russian language service, Radio Svoboda. So I'd like to set the record straight. For more than a year, we have been looking at all of our 28 language services to understand and identify our target audiences. Our Russian service has been part of this process. And our work on the audience in Russia indicates that our target audience, urban, educated people from their 20s to their 40s, want more from us. For some time, we have been working on plans to revitalize Radio Svoboda. We are currently building a state-of-the-art video and digital facility in Moscow, and we believe that our future success in Russia will be on digital media, internet, mobile, and social, with video, audio, and text content. We also decided that our Russian service director should be resident in Moscow, at the epicenter of the news on which we report and where the great majority of the folks in our Russian service reside and work. Also, about a year ago, shortly after we started this planning process, we learned that the Russian mass media law would be amended to prohibit foreign ownership of broadcast signals. This law is very similar, as Governor Lynton pointed out, is very similar to the law we have here in the United States and to those of many Western countries. The new law will go into effect next month on November 10th. Since learning of the impending change in the law, we consulted several law firms to explore if we could continue to hold our broadcast license to own and operate our AM radio station in Moscow. We also explored a deal with a Russian businessman with media holdings aimed at keeping our AM programming on the air. Unfortunately, there was no deal to be struck. In August, we were advised by our longtime Moscow counsel that there was no alternative to compliance with the new law. We do not, however, view this as a calamity. To the contrary, we see this as an opportunity to improve and strengthen our Russian service and to accelerate our plans to move to digital platforms. Truth be told, in the world in which we live today, AM radio is a bygone era. The internet, mobile, and social media are not only the future, they are very much the present. If we are to succeed in reaching those young, urban, educated Russians who are at the forefront of change in their country and who will lead Russia in the future, it will not be on a weak AM signal that can only be heard in parts of Moscow. It will be on digital media, where our target audience already lives, works, and plays. Sadly, the cessation of our AM signal and the switch to a digital service requires new ways of working with fewer people and some people with different skill sets. We thank and honor the work of those who have left us. Nevertheless, we owe it to our mission and to the American taxpayers who fund us to employ our funds in the most efficient and impactful way that we can, and that is exactly what we are doing. Some of our critics claim, quite incorrectly, that we are withdrawing or retrenching in Russia. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are adapting to changed conditions with a new strategy and new focus. We are not decreasing the amount of money we are spending on Radio Swoboda, not by 1 penny. We spend more on Radio Swoboda than we spend on any of our other services. Indeed, with our new approach, we'll be able to spend more of our budget directly on programming and new equipment. Anyone who thinks that we are retreating or shrinking in the face of a hostile Russian administration need look no further than to the hiring of our new Russian service director, Masha Gessen. Masha holds both Russian and U.S. citizenship and has had success and acclaim as a journalist, editor, author, and leader. She's a former Nieman Fellow in Journalism at Harvard University, and Masha's latest book, The Man Without a Face, The Unlikely Rise of is The Man Without a Face, The Unlikely Rise of Vladimir Putin. In the book, she presents a portrait of a ruthless politician, underestimated by friends and enemies alike, who dismantled Russia's democratic and free market reforms to establish himself as a totalitarian leader. She documents how Putin seized control of media, sent political rivals and critics into exile or to the grave, and smashed the country's fragile electoral system, concentrating power in the hands of his cronies. Now, does that sound like we're retreating? I think not. Masha Gessen is precisely the person we need if Radio Swoboda is to survive and thrive. This is a woman who is brilliant and fearless. She is unafraid to speak truth to power, and she will lead the change that will make us better. I am honored that she is now my colleague. We have just embarked down this new and exciting path to our future, and we are very enthused about the direction and our future, but we need some time to transform and retool. To those who are inclined to judge us fairly I would ask you to withhold your judgment until our transformation has been put in place and has had a chance to take root. We've just begun. We're very confident about the future and very excited about where we will go. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Go ahead. Do you have something to say?
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. So the Strategy and Budget Committee will meet as soon as we can find a time that works. We've received some new data back from the field about our impact and audiences in Russia that the board should consider. So I hope that the staff will be prepared to have a full conversation. I know that in April 2011 is the last time we had a visit of the Russia strategy. Last spring, I asked for the staff to come to the committee with requests for enhancements for our efforts in 5 areas, and Russia was on the list. So I'm just looking forward to having a more robust and detailed conversation at the committee level that we can bring to the board about our plans in Russia. And clearly the recent public activity underscores our needs to continue to make sure that we have an across U.S. international broadcasting approach to Russia, of which obviously RFE-RL has a big part, as well as VOA has a big part in the consolidated plans. But I think that it would be useful to the board for us to do that, and then that will be at the top of our agenda at the next committee meeting. So thank you.
Victor?
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to withhold final judgment, but I don't want this to pass without at least being on record as having major concerns about the direction in which we're headed in Moscow. The termination of 41 employees has triggered a firestorm of negative publicity, which may be valid and may be invalid, but it is certainly there, and certainly, at least by me, not anticipated. I don't know if further personnel changes are planned, but let me just express the hope that they're not planned. I think we've done enough. And that's one of the reasons I've asked, some of the people who were let go have been there 15, 20 years. Some may be elderly, some may be young. I realize there are some that think that irrelevant, but I think it is relevant from the standpoint of the right thing to do. Anytime you terminate someone as mayor of the city of Knoxville, I had to do it on a few occasions. It's painful. It's not fun. You actually lose sleep, or at least before it happens. And this story has taken on legs of its own that, frankly, totally surprised me. I don't pretend to be a Russian expert. I think we need to get outside independent views of the matter, and I have confidence the board is moving in that direction to either verify or to offer a different view. And I do not have the same enthusiasm for the direction in which we're headed in Moscow as Mr. Korn does at this time. Now, maybe a couple of months from now, I can say I was wrong and he was right, but I don't think the final returns are in. I don't think they're even remotely in. Russia is a very difficult place. The Russian service, from what I've understood by RFE in Moscow, has always had some level of difficulties and is not operated as well as we would hope. Part of that's the environment in which we live. When people say we acted according to Russian law in terms of termination, my initial thought is what a low bar that is. You certainly wouldn't want to follow Russian election laws as a model of democracy in terms of Putin's Russia. It's simply an updated version of Stalin, in my view, under a kinder and gentler facade, but it's only a facade, not a reality. And Putin's Russia today is frankly a danger to democracy, a danger to the world. I suspect his ultimate motive is just to throw RFE totally out of Russia. He just did it to USAID. And I think it's only a matter of time before we are effectively barred from being in Moscow in any way, and that we will have to regroup and reestablish ourselves outside the territorial limits of the Russian Federation. I'd like to be wrong about that, but we'll see. But in terms of while I respect everyone's differing points of view, I think at least one board member has major concerns and misgivings about the way things are moving. I view it with great concern, and I'd like to be wrong. We'll see how it goes, but I think that people should know the board has had robust discussions internally about this, and we move forward.
It is now.
A question for both Steve and David Ensor. Governor Meehan and others and I were talking about this earlier, but to the extent possible, if it is possible, can you two or are you two collaborating on radio? Because we do still broadcast in Russia through VOA. And, looking ahead, how much collaboration is there or could there be? Because I'm all for the digital outreach, as everyone knows. I'm a strong proponent of it, but to the extent not at the expense of traditional media where possible. So I'm just wondering if there's collaboration with VOA possible there.
Yeah, well, first of all, as you know, VOA is moving into the new space we're building, so we're consolidating there. As I understand it, David, correct me if I'm wrong, VOA's Russian programming consists of a brief period of time every day. RFE-RL is on 13 hours a day. Furthermore, the reason they're still on is that they don't own the license. So that also means that somebody else owns the license and is programming that station the other 23 hours a day. So theoretically, if the owner of the station wants to put our programming on, I suppose that is possible. I don't know that it's necessarily VOA's decision to make. I'm sure that they don't want to give up the time that they have now for their own programming. So
no, that's right. We'll go on as long as we're able. as long as we have a partner who will put us on the air. I should mention we also have a partner in television, Dosh TV, which visited us in the last week or so here in the Cohen building, and we've been doing some reporting about the U.S. electoral process on their channel. So that and a strong digital presence also at VOA is very much there, and we look forward to working closely with RFE as Steve mentioned. Our team's going to move in with theirs, and I imagine that will produce some synergies.
Let me add.
Yes, it does.
Mr. Corn, 41 people were let go in Moscow. How many new people have been employed in Moscow?
Since that time?
Yes.
Last count was 10.
10.
We're looking to hire a few more.
How many more, roughly?
Another 4 or 5. I'm not sure
Right,
the
so
exact
a total
number.
maybe 15, 14, 15?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yes.
Right. And are any terminations planned in Prague?
Yes, they are.
Can you give us an idea of how many?
Don't know yet. It's a moving target, and it is evolving.
More than 5, less than 20? I mean,
more than 5 and less than 20.
All right. I would urge you to move with great caution and take into account years of service and do as little as you have to do.
I agree with that.
The proposed cuts going forward, what services are they in, and sort of what's the strategic thinking behind that?
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
You just said you plan to cut more, so...
We're talking about Russia.
Russia, all in Russia?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I was privileged to visit the RFE office in Tbilisi. I assume there are no cuts planned in Georgia.
There are not.
All right. So the move from the current, I'll call them dilapidated, decrepit fire hazard quarters, and I went to, when do you anticipate work will begin on the new quarters? I went and saw it, but obviously no work has occurred yet.
Yeah, quite soon. Where we are is we just signed the lease last week. That took a little bit longer. There was translations and government apostilles necessary, so it didn't go quite as quickly as we would have liked. We are employing the same architectural firm in Tbilisi that we're using in Russia to take advantage of efficiencies, because the new space in Tbilisi will be modeled on the plan we have in Russia, so we'll be able to cut down on those costs. The architects are visiting Tbilisi, as are our own internal technology people and construction people on, I believe they're going to be there on Monday, and we're going to move forward as quickly as we can. I don't believe that project will take more than about 6 weeks once we actually start getting it in place.
So would it be your plan they would transition, say, in January of 2013?
That would be my hope. Maybe February is more realistic.
I realize that part of the world it's problematic on that.
And a few governors have been talking about the benefit of taking a trip to Russia.
Yes.
Perhaps in January to survey the situation.
A good time to be in Russia.
Yeah. It's.
One could accuse you of taking. No one could accuse you of a junket.
Lovely and crisp at that time of year.
Very crisp.
Having lived there.
Yes, we are planning, as we've discussed, to have an event opening the new facility in Russia. Probably not until the back end of January. We should be in before then, but Russia closes down the first 2 weeks in January for the holidays, and so we would probably be looking at the end of January.
Hey, Steve, one suggestion on the Prague side. I think everybody would appreciate it if once you do come to some conclusions as to what the reduction of forces looks like, you sort of make a presentation.
Absolutely. And by the way, that is not a surprise to the people in Prague. I have told them that, and they know it. And it's a credit to them that knowing that they continue to work wonderfully and have picked up the slack during the period of transition in Moscow and have really been carrying the ball.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd like to ask Carlos Garcia Perez, Director of the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, to update the board on the activities of OCB. Carlos?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all of you.
There you are.
I'm here in wonderful Miami. Sorry I couldn't be there this morning. I had an engagement this afternoon that I can't rely on some airlines to get me here today, so I had to travel yesterday. First of all, I want to congratulate Karen and all the award winners of the David Burke Award. Karen has done a great job for Radio and TV Marti. She's a great journalist, and she's very much part of our success. Second, I would like to mention the events that took place with the famous Cuban blogger, Yoani Sanchez. She was placed in jail 30 hours for reporting a very important trial that's going on in Bayamo, which is an eastern town of Havana. She was harassed by the police. She was detained for 30 hours, and then she was transported back to Havana so that she could not cover the event. So I think that's important that the board and everybody that's listening and watching in knows about this event. I'd like to just highlight a couple of things, and we'll go to the tape. First of all, our internet site, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, received 12,000 hits per day, which is the highest we've ever gone since we've been here. When we first got to the Martis, we were getting between 400 and 600 hits per day. So to put it in perspective, I don't know what percentage that is, but it's a pretty high percentage of increase in the internet activity and folks going to our website to obtain news and information that is relevant to their daily lives, not only in Cuba, but also in Latin America. I also want to highlight the fact that our journalist, Vanessa Ruiz, was covering the elections in Venezuela, and she got hooked up with the Al Hura folks, and she actually filed a report for Al Hura before she left Venezuela, more in the policy and the spirit of sharing resources with our other entities. And last but not least, again, I'm very proud, and yesterday we had the Gold Medal Awards. Tish, you did a great job. Dick, great job. Great event. We cover the conventions, the Democrat and Republican conventions, and VOA took the lead. We were a subleased. We subleased some space from VOA. But I had to call David in between conventions because it was humbling how all the entities that were involved coordinated and worked together to have a great product to all the different language services and countries that we service. So I think the board needs to know this. It was very important and very humbling to see all the services of the BBG working together. Having said that, I'll go to the tape, and that will be the end of my report.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask David Ensor. Oh, sorry. We're doing it.
Vivo desde Charlotte, la sede de la Convención Nacional Demócrata.
Our challenges can be met.
En vivo desde la ciudad de Tampa.
Our nation depends on it.
We have to do more to try to be helpful to get to freedom.
Jorge Rio Pedre, Televisión Martí.
I have been fortunate enough to cover for over 12 years the conventions of Democrats and Republicans. But this year in particular was very exciting for me. In Tampa, some of the key interviews we had included Mel Martinez, the former U.S. Senator for Florida. He spoke about how Mitt Romney understands that Cuban people deserve to live in liberty. Rudy Giuliani expressed his support for the U.S. embargo. Senator Marco Rubio has been always on point that the Hispanics are an example of the American dream.
There's no freedom or liberty in Cuba.
We covered different points of view at both conventions.
Not the embargo in Cuba. You probably disagree with me.
We were live at 6:30 every night during the conventions. In Charlotte, I sat down with New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez to discuss his position on Cuba if re-elected in November.
Secretary of Education Arne Duncan told us in an exclusive interview with TV Marti how concerned he is about the children of Cuba and their future.
Young people should have access to world-class content 24/7.
Understanding the democratic process in the U.S. and the role that the conventions play is important for the people in Cuba.
And from one crucial election to another.
We did all types of stories in Venezuela, and we saw a country divided after Chavez's win, fragmented socially and politically. Immediately after Hugo Chavez's victory, MartiNoticias.com had an explosive increase in visits. According to Google Analytics, that number surpassed 14,000. That's 8 times more than 2 years ago and the highest number to date.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's our report.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask David Ensor, the Director of VOA, to update the board on the activities of VOA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to focus on 2 things in my report. First of all, a visit that honored us, and secondly, a cause of great concern. The visit, of course, was by Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, and Director Lobo, Governor Ashe, and Governor Meehan were here to see it firsthand, but I'd like to just let everyone else see a little bit of what it looked like, if we can get the pictures up while I talk for a few minutes here. This was her first trip to the U.S. since she was confined to house arrest nearly 2 decades ago, and it was an extraordinary honor for me to host her at Voice of America. It was a chance for the Burmese staff and all of us at VOA to recognize her and to be recognized by one of our biggest fans for what we do. The outpouring of enthusiasm in the hallways was heartwarming, and people were lining up in the hallways to snap a photo or ask her for an autograph. It was sort of like the Beatles visiting VOA, were they still around. But we are a news organization, and so the first order of business was getting an interview with our guest. We had interviews with in both English and in Burmese. Meeting the Burmese service staff was clearly the highlight of the visit for our guest. She told me that she knows all the people in the room from the radio programs, and she wanted to see what they looked like in person. So it meant a lot to her to come. She talked about our programs as being like the voice of an old friend who kept her informed during her years of arrest. And she was on a tight schedule, but as you can see, had a quick chance to visit us in my office and to see Governors Meehan and Ashe and Dick and I and get a photo shot. So that was a very nice event. Far more ominously, as you mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, Mr. Chairman, on Wednesday, October 3rd, Tehran's bazaar was shuttered in response to the steep devaluation of the country's currency. The bazaar, being the main business district in Tehran, is not just a shopping area, but it's the place where the financial transactions take place and money changes hand. As you noted, shortly after VOA's Persian news network first telecast of the day, which broadcast video of the demonstrations at the bazaar, 3 of PNN's main satellite feeds were jammed, including the most popular, Hotbird. The jamming persisted through PNN's primetime programming, ending after PNN's programming went into overnight repeats and resumed the next day as the bazaar still remained closed and protests continued. BBC Persian, I should mention, was also jammed. Eutelsat, Hotbird's owner, confirmed that the jamming was coming from Tabriz and Tehran. Not only were audiences in Iran deprived of PNN programs, but as you mentioned, audiences in other countries could not or were not able to watch or listen to VOA and other BBG network programs because of the jamming of BBG's entire Hotbird satellite cluster. Millions of Albanians and Kosovars who regularly watch VOA's Datari newscast at 6 were greeted with static because of the Iranian government's jamming. Chas time couldn't be seen in Ukraine on Wednesday or Thursday night. Our TV affiliates were scrambling to fill the time left empty because of the jamming, and this has caused undue strain on relations with some of our most important affiliates around the world. Radio Farda and other RFE-RL programs, Radio Sawa programs, I understand, and also other VOA radio programs were also knocked off the air by the jamming. These programs were available by live streaming on the Internet, although according to some audience feedback we have, the Iranians were also able to partially disrupt web access and SMS access as they were jamming our satellites. So I just want to say the public condemnation of this action by the board has been most helpful in getting this matter front and center with the satellite industry and other international broadcasters, and I want to thank the governors for your support in the matter. We've been in contact, we writ large have been in contact with Eutelsat, the owner of the Hotbird satellite, to ask it to take appropriate action to ensure that our VOA and other BBG programs get to their intended audiences, and for Eutelsat to take appropriate measures in regards to international broadcasters who jam other international broadcasters. Eutelsat has issued a condemnation of Iran's jamming and has appealed to the ITU to intervene and end the jamming. I would just end by saying that as events in Iran move forward, I'm afraid we probably need to expect this to happen again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Well, first of all, Mr. Ensor, thank you for hosting Aung San Suu Kyi. And I should point out, actually, before she came over here, and Governor McCue was able to join Governor Meehan and I as well as she visited RFA. Right. She obviously, she arrived 10 minutes early, which had the planners all out of joint because they expected her to, and she got there at 1:50. But that gave us 10 more minutes with a true hero who was there. But I was also impressed by her demeanor, her diction, her command of public speaking, the flawless way in which she, without notes, spoke to the RFA staff for, I guess, 20 minutes. She's a natural politician. She's a natural leader. And no vindictiveness, no bitterness towards those who held her in house arrest for almost 2 decades, but rather emphasis on the future, truly, in my view, the Nelson Mandela of Burma in terms of where she wants her native land to move forward. So it was a special time for the BBG family, both at RFA as well as VOA, to host her and to have her here. On the other subject, obviously, Iran continues to be a major source of concern, and I'd like to ask you to update us on where the reestablishment of Presiding stands.
Well, VOA owns the name Presiding, and when we're ready with a broadcast that we think is worthy of the name, we'll be putting it on the air. In the meantime, as you know, sir, we have a satirical program called On 10 on the air, which is getting some attention and building a bit of an audience. But the issues that took Presiding as it is off the air, the personnel issues are complex and very difficult, and we're still working with them, sir.
Obviously, we've asked this a number of occasions, and at least for myself, I would hope we could bring closure to the issue. I mean, I hope we're not sitting here in January and I'm asking the same question, you're giving the same answer. And I don't say that to personalize it, but simply to say, you know, it's been 10 months. There does need to be closure, either, you know, fish or cut bait, as they say, or, I mean, close it down and just acknowledge that it's over with and move on, or rejuvenate it and with either current or new personnel. It seems to me those are your choices, as opposed to 10 months of in abeyance.
Yes, sir. I'm as frustrated as you are, and even more than you, if I may say so, want this done. We spent an hour and a half on it in my office yesterday, the most recent meeting, and there have been many others.
I would just encourage you to make a decision and move ahead. Whatever that decision is. Obviously, let the board know what it is and keep us informed, but at some point, the discussion phase has to end and the implementation phase has to begin. And we can't just have President in suspension and in abeyance and some board member at every board meeting asking you the same question.
I agree, sir.
Any other questions, Michael?
I just wanted to quickly talk about the visit that Brian and Lynn and I had to the region. One of the things that I found very interesting was the meetings that we had. We went to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and I'd hoped to go to Egypt, but for some bureaucratic reasons I was unable to accompany Brian, but Brian did go see the MBM staff in Cairo. But one of the things I found most useful of the trip was the team we have on the ground in Dubai for MBN, as well as the opportunities that we have as U.S. international broadcasting there. The time we spent with the Iran director, who's Alan Ayers, fabulously great resource. Very smart in the region, had high praise for U.S. international broadcasting efforts as it relates to all of our work at RFE and VOA and the efforts that we have there. But it was very useful for us to hear firsthand some of this and incorporate it in some of our strategic thinking. So I wanted to thank the staffs of the BBG MBN for putting the trip together and some of the insights. I also had a chance to deliver remarks about our global internet freedom efforts in Saudi Arabia, and I think that it was very interesting there. Our colleagues from the BBC were there, also delivering remarks, and it's not usual because the BBC and all of U.S. international broadcasting is not allowed to broadcast in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Brian made another attempt with the officials at the Ministry Department to ask for a license, and 3 to 5 years sounds like Thursday's outhouse never. But we continue to ask. But I think what's happening in the region that I found very encouraging was just sort of the skipping over of one whole level of communications platforms and on to another. In Saudi Arabia, the use of smartphones and mobile is 60% compared to 40% here in the U.S. I mean, there's just a whole leap of technology to a region of the world with 20 countries and 400 million people are. And it just sort of underscored our efforts to continue to be very smart and creative across U.S. international broadcasting on these other platforms where you can skip a whole generation of people who there's 500 television stations or satellite opportunities, but if everyone's just getting their information from the mobile phones, then we need to be making sure that we're putting our content and our reach and access. So it just underscored our strategy to keep this in a very important region to our country there. So I want to thank Lynn and Brian for a great trip and staffing it, and the rest of the team that helped put it together, and our tireless work on the speech right up until the last very minute. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? RFA President Libby Liu cannot be here today. In her absence, Dan Sutherland will update the board on the activities of RFA.
You hit here. Thanks. Governor Lynton, I just want to thank you for your statement about your statement of support for our broadcasters in Cambodia, RFA and VOA. Any support that we can give, public support, is very helpful to us. We've seen this in the past. This is not the first. This is not the first time that we've had an attempt at intimidation. In the past, we've had threats. We had something as recently as earlier this week where a couple of unidentified people started following one of our broadcasters in cars as he was returning, I believe, to Phnom Penh. It was obviously an attempt to pull him off the road and get him to stop his reporting. So thanks again, and I hope we can continue to get your support. Today I'd like to highlight the coverage of the Rohingya people in Burma. These are the stateless, not very well known, mostly Muslim people who made headlines several months ago following the outbreak of communal or sectarian violence in Western Burma. The violence has subsided, but the situation is still explosive. Tensions are high. RFA was one of the few news organizations that had a reporter and a videographer at the scene of the violence just after it erupted. It got a little bit dangerous, and we had to, at one point, pull our reporter back. But he has very willingly returned again. Recently, the same reporter, the same videographer, by the way, back to the scene again. I have a little clip, I hope it's just 20 seconds since I don't want to go too long, on just showing our Burmese reporter at that dangerous point where houses and buildings were burning. And I don't know if we can get that up there or not. In the end, more than 80 people were killed on both sides, a total from both sides. And that's just the official count. There were probably, we suspect, many hundreds more were killed. Tens of thousands of people were displaced, and they are now in camps, so-called temporary camps. We sent a videographer, another videographer, into a refugee camp in Bangladesh, which is just across the border, across a narrow river with Burma, to record the flight of hundreds of Rohingyas who escaped the violence in boats. On the Bangladesh side of the border, we have video of the border guards forcing these people back to Burma, where they feared for their fate. Most of the international coverage of the Rohingyas lacked depth. It's lacked any extensive portrayal of the human side of the story. So I think we've filled the gap through a series of interviews with Rohingya refugees, some of whom we found in hiding in Bangladesh. Even before this violence occurred, the RFA had created a Rohingya hub page for our English website. That was, I think, a year ago, when the Rohingya were really unknown. And I just want to show you a couple of the features of this website. This will be brief. Let's see if we can get it up there. Yeah, there it is. At the top, we've got the countries that the Rohingya have been fled to, which, as you can see, is pretty much from the Middle East all the way to Indonesia. Hundreds of thousands of them had to leave the country. The slideshows and videos there are slideshows down the middle, there are videos to the right, and then we have a list of RFA stories on the Rohingya that's continuously updated. I really like this function, and I think the last story on there is probably 2 days ago. So what we're trying to do is keep covering this story, which gets so little coverage. I mean, if there's violence, it gets coverage and then it drops off the map. And I think one thing about RFA is we try to stay with stories and not drop them. And we try to give a voice to voiceless people such as these. We received lots of criticism for this. It's very difficult, one of the most difficult stories I think we've tried to cover, because there's misinformation, high emotions, rumors that really take off and create trouble and attacks on people. And we feel still that despite the hatred directed against the Rohingya, we just have to do this job. It's highly charged. It could go violent again. On the positive side, Burma's president has appointed members of an independent commission to investigate how this happened and to offer some solutions. I think that's a positive sign. So that's my report. Thank you.
I'm going to turn the chair over now to Dennis because I have to leave shortly.
The new Michael Lynton. Lucky me. Brian Conniff, report on MBN, please. Thank you.
I'll let Michael's comments on the trip stand. I think he captured the major events that took place. And I would just then add an echo to the comments made by the chairman concerning the release of Al Hurra correspondents Bashar Fahmy and freelance correspondent Janet Anal. Their release remains our highest priority, and we continue to pursue all available leads in the region. We have somebody in the region right now contacting intermediaries, representatives of the Syrian government where possible. So that's my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. IBB Director's Report. Mr. Lobo. Sorry. Oh, I apologize.
Do we have the certificates?
Recognition of Language Services Anniversaries, Governor Ashe.
Do we have the certificates? Well, I know you just want me to talk about it. I thought we were going to reenact it. We're not. Or anyone here from Kurdish or Swahili?
Yes, the service chief for Swahili and Kurdish.
All right. Why don't you all come up here since I'm talking about you? Mr. Chairman, members of the board, a few weeks ago I was privileged to visit with the VOA Kurdish service, and David Ensor was there as well. And David, maybe you want to come up here, as well as the VOA Swahili service. Let me speak to the Kurdish service first. It was their 20th anniversary. And it's the only international broadcaster that speaks to the Kurds, not only in Iraq, but also in Syria, Turkey, Iran, all which have sizable Kurdish communities. It was on April 23rd that VOA started simulcasting its Kurdish language radio broadcasts on direct-to-home satellite, giving listeners in the Kurdish-speaking regions of Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, and Iran, I should add as well, a new way to hear popular programs. So it was a real pleasure to represent the board and to be joined with David Ensor in saluting 20 years of service. And let me, if you'd like to say a few words to the board.
Thank you very much. On behalf of all my colleagues at Kurdish Service, we want to thank all of you for your support. Those 20 years, they were full of successes, and we moved forward every step forward. And 2 days ago, we had our program review, and we were told that VOA Kurdish is one of the best radios at VOA. And we know that we can do much better, and it's our dream to have TV program. And I have confidence in my colleagues, and I know with your support we can have a good TV program, and which is our listeners' dream too. And as you know, Kurdish people, they have an important role in the Middle East, in particular in Iraq and Turkey, Syria, and Iran. And for your information, recently Kurdish programming was jammed also in Iran. And so we ask you, please let us have the opportunity to serve our people, our listeners more by having a TV program. And we were promised to have one, but we wished, and we hope that this promise will come into reality. And thank you again, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Ensor, would you like to say a word?
Sir, I'll leave it with the service chief. We're very proud of our Kurdish service, and she's put very well how strong it is and what her hopes are for it.
Well, thank you very much for 20 wonderful years, and we hope you have another 20 or 40 more years, as long as it takes. But a even more senior service, of course, is the VOA Swahili service that celebrated its golden anniversary of 50 years, starting in 1961, when they first taped just weekly programs, and then a 30-minute show was launched the following year in May of 1962. And today, the service produces 9.5 hours of original programming per week. And VOA Swahili has a strong presence on the internet. And their programs are carried by 10 FM affiliates, including 2 top-rated FM stations in Kenya and Tanzania. And distribution also occurs in Rwanda as well. And the audience size has grown as the language has spread westward from the East African coast, the original target country having been Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. And today they also include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and the service reach extends even further than that into the United Arab Emirates. And the UAE has strong and historic cultural ties with Zanzibar, which of course is now part of Tanzania. And the service receives much support from the Swahili-speaking community. So again, congratulations on 50 outstanding years. I'm not sure any of the original employees are still here, but although Leo, if he'd been working in that area, he'd be here. And it's still very much here, but I'd like to recognize you to say a few words as well. Go ahead and just push the button. No.
When the light's on, it's on.
Push the middle one. There you go.
There you go. Thank you, Governor. I would like to thank the board on behalf of my colleagues at the service and the African Division as a whole for your support throughout the 50 years. We feel like we're in the midlife phase, and we are still going on strong, and we hope for another 50 years of success. As Governor Ashe said, Swahili service audience has expanded from the east coast of Africa, going through into the DRC now, and the audience is growing, and the need for information and news is also growing. We're covering an area which has a landscape of different kind of issues, and so we have to be in tune with a lot of issues that are going on in our region, and we're trying to do that through different platforms now, on radio, on video, web-based video, on mobile. And as my colleague said here, we really hope that we'll get a TV show, because we think we're ready for a TV show. Our main competitor, BBC, is just 3 months ago launched a half-hour radio show in East Africa, and it's very successful. And we would like to be in that competition too. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. If I do my math right, actually it's 51 years if you started in 1961. I'm not sure how we came up. Maybe we were a year late.
The 50 years are counted from the day we started having a live show.
All right.
1961, we were having a taped show. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moving now to the, I have to announce that we've lost a quorum, so this is not, we're no longer in a formal BBG.
Well, Mr. Chairman, actually it is. You just can't take a vote except a motion to
Well, I'm just
adjourn.
saying we've lost the quorum.
You are absolutely correct. We no longer have a quorum, but we can continue meeting.
Well, we can meet. I'm just saying we can't take a vote. We're saying the same thing.
Except a vote to adjourn.
Thank you, Governor
Can't do
Ashe.
that under Robert's rules.
Director Lobo.
I'll be brief. I have a couple of things to report on, and then I'd like to turn it over to a couple of my colleagues for a more substantive report. First of all, some news that I just received yesterday, and I reported to the board earlier today in a governor's briefing. We will be losing one of our key executives here at the BBG. Our Chief Financial Officer, Mary Jean Bueller, has announced that she is leaving the agency to take on a new position as Chief Financial Officer of NOAA at the Department of Commerce. I praised the work of Mary Jean Bueller during the almost 3 years that she was here serving the agency, and the board commended her on her fine work, and we wish her nothing but good luck on her new job. Thank you, Mary Jean.
I hope at our November 15 meeting, maybe Ms. Bueller can return, that we'll have an appropriately drafted resolution commending her for 3 years of service, and maybe the Department of Commerce would let her take 30 minutes off to come over and for us to
as long as it comes out of her new budget, Governor.
I'll be glad to donate a few dollars.
Sure.
And,
okay, thank you very much, and best of luck, and thank you for all your service, Mary Jean.
I've got some others.
Oh, you have more?
Oh,
okay.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
You told me you have 1 minute. All right,
A couple of good pieces of news, and I'm delighted at today's meeting. We have so many people to honor here today, but within the last couple of months, we've had a couple of wonderful events here at the Cohen Auditorium, starting a few weeks ago with Hispanic Heritage Month, where our HR staff put together a fabulous event. I was privileged to be one of the speakers, and it was proper recognition for our Latinos here at the agency and all of the agencies surrounding the Cohen building in this neighborhood. And then yesterday, we just had a terrific event, one of the best that I've attended in the couple of years that I've been here. It was the annual 2012 Gold Medal Award ceremonies. It was held yesterday in the Cohen Auditorium. It was a standing room only audience. The agency received 346 nominations and presented 94 gold medals to agency employees, including 4 gold medals to LES, locally employed staff members overseas. The medal awards are unique in that anyone in the organization can nominate anyone else. So these were not top-down awards. These were colleagues and fellow workers nominating their fellow colleagues. The Gold Medal Award recipients serve as an example of extraordinary effort, initiative, excellence, and dedication to this agency's mission. All recipients received a beautiful frame certificate and medal and a cash payment of $2,500. So I've done this for 3 years. This was the very best one yet, and thank you to Tish King and her great staff for putting it together. We have recently entered into a project with the Partnership for Public Service, an NGO based here in Washington, and we've asked them to help us devise and implement initiatives to help improve employee morale at the Cohen building. The unions have met with the partnership folks in a lengthy meeting, and they have told us that they're going to be very supportive of this project. The major deliverables will be a report which will be focused on our major challenges and an action plan developed by senior management as well as the workforce to make measurable improvements in our workplace environment. So I've met personally with all of the IBB offices to introduce this initiative, which starts next week, and to encourage participation in the upcoming workshops. And my colleagues David Ensor and Carlos Garcia are going to be meeting with their workforce as well on this initiative, and we look forward to some good things as a part of that.
Mr. Lobo, could I ask you or encourage you, I hope this group also looks at the status of our contract employees who represent over 30% of our workforce.
They will
because they, in my view, have not been properly treated over the years because they don't have health insurance, pension benefits, and but they are getting flu shots.
All right. They will be involved. Thank you, Governor. And their surveys that which they filled out for us are being examined by the partnership as well. So all of their challenges will be taken into consideration.
Right. Although we should recognize the surveys of contract employees are a different survey from federal employees.
They are.
And totally different questions. So I think that compares a little bit apples to oranges, even though they're, quote, surveys. I don't know why, but some lawyer tells us we can't.
The government does not allow us to. OPM does not allow us to. So.
It's one of the unfortunate consequences of this whole situation.
So I'd like to turn it over now to Andre Mendez, who's going to deliver his TSI report for us. Andre.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, governors, colleagues. I got to tell you, even after 2.5 years of being here, I can't help but be awed when I see the Burke Awards and all of the other reports, awed at the fact that of what this agency does. And the TSI staff is both honored to be able to help with that distribution and also delighted that we continue to improve that distribution methodology. If I could ask you to reduce the volume on the video until I ask you to put it in, thank you so much. The first time I'm going to talk about to you about is the Pangea implementation. Approximately a year ago, this board voted to expand the Pangea system utilization to the majority of the entity heads, of the broadcast entities. I am here to tell you that in August, this past August, we completed an on-time, on budget, and with additional functionality migration. And right now, all of the entities that are participating are able to share digital content and share that platform. Now, normally,
Andre, just a quick question. So which entities are participating, which are not?
VOA, MBN, RFERL, NOCB are on the platform. RFA is not.
RFA is not. Okay, thank you.
Why
Now,
is RFA not?
they have chosen not to participate.
I didn't hear your answer.
They have chosen not to participate.
Well, we know that. I mean, the question was why? And maybe Mr. Sutherland can answer, or maybe wants to defer Ms. Liu when she's with it.
Not directly involved.
I didn't hear you.
I think we need to come back to this after the meeting or when Libby's able to weigh in, because it's Libby's issue. Libby's been working on it.
Okay, somebody let
be a good reason. There may
President Liu know that the board would like him to have an explanation, please. Thank you.
Andre, did they give you a reason?
I was told, officially I was told that they were looking at it. They were looking to see how the implementations went with the other organizations, and that they would make a decision at a later date.
Okay, so they're open to it.
Now, I should tell you that with technology implementations, normally we come to the board and ask you for money. In this particular one, it was rather sui generis. This project actually put out $450,000 of savings in the first year, and those savings will be recurrent year after. In addition, Pangea has now been adopted for our mobile platform, for websites for mobile, with an additional savings of $400,000, which translates into about $4.25 million savings over 5 years. I can tell you that in my 30 years of being in technology, I have never seen a project spew out money in the first year. So that is quite unique. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to use that dramatic word for effect, Governor. Now, kudos to MBN, OCB, ODDI, which had a tremendous role in this, to a lesser degree TSI, because we were just basically managing the project from a leadership standpoint, VOA, but also especially the Pangea team at RFERL that did an outstanding job above and beyond, and with a dedication that is beyond compare. This is an outstanding example of thoughtful, diligent, and pragmatic entity collaboration. Moving on to our installation of FMs in Afghanistan. Over the last 4 months, since I last had the opportunity to brief you on this, we had substantial progress on our Afghanistan FM base. After the release of the funds, from the continuing resolution in May, we went on air in Ghazni in May, Pul-e-Alam in mid-June, and Kalat in mid-August, and we have another 3 installations scheduled for the next month and a half, which will bring the total to 14, and also ensuring that we are providing coverage to all of the major cities in Afghanistan. Moving on to Libya, following on the tremendous success.
Andre, before we move on, did we not just also have a signed agreement with the Afghanistani government?
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Lobo. Appreciate it. We have actually just finished signing an agreement with the Minister of Information, Minister Rahim, guaranteeing our on-air licenses for another 5 years at no charge. So that is very significant. Thank you, sir. In terms of Libya, following on the tremendous success of the transmitters that we've installed for Radio Sawa in Benghazi and in Tripoli, we now have equipment for Misrata that is actually in Benghazi being staged. They arrived in perfect condition despite having a tortuous course getting there. And we expect it to be on air between now and the end of the calendar year. Between these 3 cities, we are looking at coverage of approximately 95% of the Libyan population. So I think our timing could not have been better, and we were very, very lucky that we were able to conduct these installations. In Haiti, we just finished the complete rebuild and upgrade of 14 FM affiliates that had been destroyed by the 2010 earthquake. After the funds were made available, the project completion just took place, and we are in training of the Haitian nationals now in the operation of the equipment. And last but not least, I would like to share with you, and if you could put my signal up now from the laptop, I would like to share with you the signal, and no, that's the wrong laptop. Let's try the one at the end of the abortive, but I'll tell you about it. Just recently, at the end of September, we went on air on Telstar 18 with VOA Weishi program over China. It is on 24 hours a day on the #1 platform in China, Telstar 18, and basically giving opportunity for access for about 11% of the Chinese population, the latest recorded penetration of dishes in China. This is an unjammed signal, CD quality, and basically contains all the content from VOA. And the most amazing thing is it costs about $250,000 per year for the transmission, which is about 1/40th of what we normally spend on legacy platforms. So the price-performance ratio of this particular signal is absolutely astonishing. I wish I could show you, because I'll show you this way, which will not be nearly as impressive, but that we'll have to do. Oh, voila. And now I'll plug it in so you can actually hear it as well. There you go. Can you raise the volume a little bit? This is VOA Weishi. And actually what you're seeing is the signal being brought back from over the internet from the region so that you can watch it here. This is the exact signal that is being seen all over China and Southeast Asia right now on Telstar 18, the largest penetration with the best quality signal at the lowest price that we've ever had in this agency into China.
11% of the Chinese population can get this? Is that
11% of the population now has satellite dishes, the overwhelming majority on the KU band, which is what this signal is on. So effectively, yes, we have a potential audience right now of 11% of
vastly
Chinese
more
population.
than any other traditional platform. Exponentially.
Exponentially. Multiple orders of magnitude. And again, at the best price-performance ratio ever executed in the history of this agency.
Any jamming on this?
None whatsoever. This follows on to two other signals that we put on air on this bird, again, the #1 bird in China. We have RFA, Mandarin and Tibetan, and VOA Mandarin and Tibetan. So these are three signals for a grand total of $750,000 into the most populous country in the world with the best signal we've ever placed into this area. And that concludes my report.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Mendes. Mr. Mendes, I wouldn't be faithful to Congressman Walter Jones if I didn't ask what the status is of the Edward Murrow transmission facility in Greenville, and you still look forward to many years of operation.
The station is operating very well. It continues to operate it at a very high level of reliability. And at this point, there are no plans to do anything with the station but continue its operation. Actually, Governor, you give me an opportunity to mention something else that I wasn't going to mention because I didn't want to spend more of your time. But I will tell you this. This year, when you look at the operations of all of our stations throughout the entire globe, and in comparison with the years 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012 that just finished, we have had the highest reliability rating for the stations at 99.81, which results actually in a diminution of downtime since 2009 of over 1,000 hours. And this in the face of tremendous budgetary concerns and smaller staffing population at the stations. So the folks at all of the stations throughout the world should be absolutely commended for the outstanding effort that they put together with ever-aging technology.
And let me ask you one other question, just for the record. You and I have discussed this privately, but I think it's good to get it on the record. As employees at the Edward Murrow Station retire or depart, are they being replaced by federal employees or contract employees?
I think that it behooves this organization to look at each one of those and make sure that we make a decision that is fully informed by the board and that preserves the most flexibility for the station. At this point, we don't have any such vacancies available right now. But when the opportunity comes, we'll have to decide how we want to proceed on that.
Well, for the last 4 or 5, have they been replaced by contract employees or by federal employees?
There was a period in time when we were aggressively pursuing contract employees. There were proposals on the table for closing the station, so that was the prudent thing to do. As I mentioned now, as we go forward with each opportunity that arises, we will have to look at the situation, look at what the best price-performance ratio for the government is, what offers the government the best performance and the most flexibility, and then proceed accordingly, of course, with full information of the board.
Governor McCue.
You're giving me a lot vaguer answer than you gave me in private. In private, as I recall, you said that you were not replacing contract employees, and now you frankly are giving
Governor,
an
what
answer.
I said in private is that at this point we were not doing any replacement of full-time employees with contractors. That continues to be the case. I don't think that any agency in the federal government can undertake a policy, a rigid policy, that continues ad infinitum in the face of the budgetary circumstances.
Maybe you can keep Governor Ashe updated
By all
and
means.
informed on that.
I'm really asking it for Congressman Jones's office because they're the ones who are concerned about it, but you're not reassuring to me.
Okay, Governor McCue.
It was a great report and particularly exciting news about getting more of our content into China. So my question for you is, where do you see the greatest potential for expansion of our audiences through the platforms that you're building out, through technology and innovation?
Well,
what markets are you looking at and what percentages of growth? I mean, that's really exciting about China and getting more into China.
I think for each one of our target markets, we're going to continue to see an evolution of the content consumption platforms, without a doubt. When you look at, for example, Africa, the explosion in satellite dish ownership and mobile technology is absolutely astonishing, and in all likelihood will leapfrog actually wired internet connectivity, for example. When you look at the Middle East, what you have is mobile penetration in Saudi Arabia that is about 200%. So two telephones for each belly button, and that number continues to increase. In other countries, quite honestly, we think that some of the legacy platforms will continue to be relevant. There are portions of Africa where shortwave is eminently a viable platform. Burma continues to be so. Rural Afghanistan continues to be so. And other countries where, frankly, it is not the best usage of this agency's resources. But, we have to deal with a continuing education process. But I don't think that there is any doubt whatsoever that in the near term, if we fail to continue to migrate to a television platform on satellite, if we where it's applicable, to the internet where it's applicable, and to mobile platforms especially where it's applicable, we will be doing this agency a disservice.
It would be good, maybe we can do this offline or maybe at the next meeting to learn more about the mobile and what we're doing with mobile, because I read a lot about it. I just don't fully understand how we're applying it.
Well, quite honestly, I think that the adoption of Pangea as our mobile platform brings to the table both savings and the ability to really leverage, what is wonderful technology. One of the main concerns is going to be our ability to produce content that is competitive, and that will involve some degree of migration of talent and resources. But again, we need to make sure that it's front and center in terms of our future strategy, because otherwise we'll be doing a disservice.
Governor McCue, in Mali, where there's obviously a lot of difficulty, a lot of tragedy going on at the moment, we have a new initiative called Mali One, which is basically straightforward little short radio newscasts, but people get them on their telephones. So that in northern Mali, where the Islamist rebels have taken over radio stations and either closed them down or are using them themselves, people can still get newscasts now in French. And we're trying a small pilot project, which we'll have more to tell you about once we see if it works, in Songhai, which is the local language of northern Mali. The mobile phone is in the middle of an Islamist revolt, is proving more effective than radio in some parts of the world, in that part.
Okay, we have to hard stop pretty soon, but Dick, why don't you carry on with your...
Well, we had two final reports, a brief fiscal report from Mary Jean Bueller, and then a report from Lynn Weil on communication.
Are we okay on time? I can stay. Oh, you can't? Well, then Susan, I can preside.
All right, well, those are Mary Jean.
Thank you. Before I begin my report, I do want to say that I have been honored to work with this organization and the last board and the journalists and support staff at the agency and the grantees. I'm humbled by the work of our journalists and the magnitude and impact of the mission of this agency. And I don't think I've ever worked for an agency with a more noble mission. And I am and have been very honored to have been a part of it. On to my fiscal report. Fiscal year 12, we closed out the year with no issues, and we've moved on to fiscal year 13. We started fiscal year 13 in a continuing resolution, which we will be in for about 6 months. We'll be monitoring our spending throughout this period so that we're well positioned for the final spending bill. The President's sequestration report did come out. I don't know, it is a public document, so if you go on the White House website, you can see the report. However, of most interest is what is the impact to the BBG if sequestration does take place. It's an 8.2% cut, which is about $61 million, which would start in January if it goes forward. And it's still kind of up in the air whether that is actually going to happen or not, but we do need to prepare, and next week we'll be doing some reviews to look at the impacts of what that would mean for our agency. That kind of concludes fiscal year 13. Fiscal year 14, the budget was submitted October 21st to OMB, 1 week following the board's final decision on the budget. And I would like to formally thank the budget staff for their efforts, which were truly above and beyond. We had to cancel some people's planned vacations. They worked into the night and through the weekend to get the budget done. They stepped up to the plate with true professionalism, and they turned around the budget in a week through some very Herculean efforts, and they deserve formal recognition for their good work. And we look forward from this point now working with OMB on passback.
Well, please thank them for us, because we know that it was a very difficult process and very involved, and we appreciate the work.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me just express appreciation. I'm sure I speak for you and others since it's the last time she'll officially be here at a board meeting, to express appreciation for your brief but effective tenure here. And we look forward to hearing from you and staying in touch, even in a private capacity in the future.
And Lynn Wild.
Thanks very much, and Mr. Presiding Governor. Just wanted to acknowledge that you mentioned a hard stop, so I'll try to collapse the oral portion of my report into just a couple of minutes. Governors, as you're aware, in the IBB Director's Report, there is a section that includes most of the activities of this office for the last month, and I'll hit some of the highlights now in the interest of transparency, considering this is an open meeting. First of all, this office oversees outreach to Congress, the media, internal communications, and the graphics department, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of all the team in doing that, every one of them. Thank you, Director Lobo, for mentioning the Hispanic Heritage Month, as well as the Medal Awards ceremonies. There are other activities that this office oversees, but those public events where people are acknowledged and the hard work of our journalists and our colleagues is acknowledged are very, very important, and I applaud everyone on my team for that. So, touching on those topics, in Congress, we've been working closely with members of staffs in the Senate and the House on pursuing passage of legislation to provide some relief from the ban on domestic dissemination known as Smith-Mundt. The board gave us this direction, actually in discussion well before January, but in a formal directive in January, and we continue to pursue that. As you know, the legislation passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act in May and is now before the Senate, and we'll keep you up to speed on that as it progresses. There's very good likelihood that there will be a vote on the NDAA in the Senate in the lame duck session. Working in close coordination with RFERL, BBG has been helping with congressional outreach on the issue of the changes in Russia, both on the platform as well as on the personnel. Some questions have come up as we've made those outreach calls, but as Steve Coyne originally reported, we're looking into other ways that we can be more effective in outreach, both to the Hill as well as to media, to ensure that all questions are answered.
How would that be?
Well, in partnership with RFERL, we have been calling people on the Hill.
I was just trying to think it's more specific of what
key
you're doing.
staffers on our oversight committees, as well as members of staffs of members of Congress who are interested in Russia or have spoken out in Russia. Right. These calls have been made over the last 2 weeks, thanks especially to Susie Carroll, the newest addition of our team, who was acknowledged in passing at the last board meeting behind the scenes, but unfortunately there was no time during the open session to do so. So Susie, welcome aboard, and thanks for your hard work, especially on that effort, which continues even today.
And is there any word on when the Pelosi meeting has been rescheduled, or?
Well, I believe Governor McCue addressed that in the closed session. Maybe you'd like to address it again?
We didn't talk specifically about Pelosi, but what I'm planning to do is to call and make individual visits as much as I can after the
Okay,
elections.
I called it that because it was in her conference area, but maybe it's someone else.
There's no plan. No, there's no plans for a group briefing at this point.
There had been, but it had to be rescheduled due to a scheduling conflict.
But I gather from what you're saying, it won't happen because you're doing it individually, not as a group.
Governor McCue?
Those are my.
No, okay.
Thank you. Collaborating with the staff and leadership of VOA and RFA, we organized the drafting, editing, and delivery of a letter to Representative Dana Rohrabacher, replying to separate letters that he'd sent to David Ensor and Libby Liu on the reports of forced organ harvesting in China. We also facilitated a response by David Ensor to a letter from Representative Ed Royce regarding the status of Parasite. BBG oversaw and took part in the preparation of a briefing for an interested congressional staff regarding VOA's Persian service. That was spearheaded by Stephen McGinley, the now no longer new congressional liaison for the Voice of America. And nearly a dozen key House and Senate staffers from both sides of the aisle attended the event, which featured David Ensor and a well-known Persian service anchor presenting what's new and on the horizon for audiences in Iran and replying to queries about the internal workings of the service. We also, we just talked about that briefing, so never mind. With respect to media, thanks once again to Tish King and the team for public affairs efforts with MBN, working closely together. We have, with the State Department and media freedom organizations, we've been spreading the word about the two Al-Hurra journalists who went missing in Syria on August 20th and were reportedly in the custody of Syrian government forces. BBG collaborated closely with RFA and VOA to elevate the visit of Aung San Suu Kyi to both organizations during her trip to the United States. The coverage included prominent wire service stories and active social media engagement. We provided significant support to a Washington Post foreign affairs reporter who's researching the subject of internet anti-censorship. That report is pending. VOA and BBG have been working on other stories as well. Since they're not out yet, we will keep them to ourselves for the moment. We fielded media inquiries, including from El Nuevo Herald and the Washington Post, concerning the Office of Cuba Broadcasting and the ruling by Federal Labor Relations Authority on a 2009 OCB RIF that I believe everyone in the room has had a chance to review. On internal communications, we provided staff support for a number of events, as I indicated, but we also drafted messages for agency-wide distribution on matters of interest to the workforce, including legislative developments regarding the fiscal year 2013 budget. We created numerous features for our employee blog, TuneIn, to highlight individuals and events around the agency. And we began work on the Medal Awards ceremony, which also included internal announcements. So thanks again to everybody for that. Oh, and to Lita Johnson and the graphics team, thank you very much for your hard work. Some of that work gets overlooked. 4 other items. Governor Meehan delivered a speech at the Saudi Broadcasting Forum, which I believe he spoke about earlier, and we had a lot of support from our teams on that. And we hosted a panel of experts at BBG headquarters to discuss developments in Russia that had been proposed by VOA with the title New Russian Laws Tightening the Noose on Free Speech. Tish King, Public Affairs Director, dedicated a day to in-person outreach to faculty and students at Sarkissian University's Newhouse School of Public Communications and the Maxwell School of Internal Affairs. So that concludes the report from this office. Thanks very much for your attention. And once again, Governors, I would refer you to the written report if you have further questions.
Thank you, Lynn. That concludes the agenda. Is there any further business?
I would move we stand in adjournment until November the 15th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think we're adjourned until November 15th. Thank you very much. Yeah. All in favor? Yes. I didn't think there was going to be too much objection. Without objection.